Hi, this is our second video that I'm sharing with you, and it focuses on the syllabus, which you have seen earlier versions of, but I wanted to share with you and highlight a couple points regarding version 2.0, which I shared with you a couple days ago and also sent over to the law school for approval. I'm going to assume I'm getting the dean's approval for this, but if I don't and something happens, I'll have to make some changes and I'll let you know if that's the case. Um, I'm going to focus primarily on issues that you may not have looked at that are really important for you to succeed in this class. So I'll move through this relatively quickly overall, but I will then stop at certain points and um, emphasize a few things. So, introduction, we got that down. We've seen this before, nothing new here. Um, Intended learning outcomes, there's basically two. Number one, I want you to better understand how you can look at law through the prism of economics. Um, and there are classes on law and economics in general. Uh, I thought it would be more interesting to try to apply it to a subset, and that is the very compelling and troubling issues of corruption that we have right now. In many countries, that doesn't seem to go away. And by looking at these principles through this lens, I'm hoping to inspire you to think perhaps a little bit differently about corruption and also perhaps to um, bring a little bit more fresh energy to the issue, which at times can seem a bit tired since we've been talking about corruption for years in many, many countries, in many places. So let's go now to the general course outline. I want to emphasize here that we're going from a micro level. We're looking at first transactions and corrupt transactions. Then we move to the organizations that may be facilitating those transactions. And beyond that, we look at the organizational structures in society, top level leadership, as well as citizens in a democracy that may tolerate or even condone or otherwise support these types of corrupt transactions and why why these circumstances may continue. All right, we've already gone through the first class, and that was a getting to know you kind of class. And unfortunately, we can't really do all that much. 35 days later, in the middle of a long gap, I gave you some assignments and some videos, and you took an online quiz and you did a survey, which I appreciate and I'll build into things moving forward. You all did pretty well on or most of you did pretty well on the quiz, and I appreciate that. And I've gone over that already, and it's posted. All right, so in a less than 2 weeks, we're meeting again for our second class, and we will be focusing on the transactions, the transactional aspect of corruption. I have various assignments, and there will be no quiz associated with this class, um, like you had earlier, but you will be judged on your participation, and I'll talk about that later on. In the meantime, you will see that I have pre-class preparation activities, and I'm asking you, among other things, to watch a video, which you're watching right now, to read the syllabus, which I imagine you're reading or have read, and then there's a couple of videos, and then there's some very, I'd say, pinpointed readings from Susan Rose Ackerman in Law and Economics of Bribery and Extortion. There is a relatively short Republic Act 4200, and then there's a portions of a law review from the University of Florida. So, nothing really need to talk about that. We'll be talking about that when we meet. Next, we will on the 8th be talking about the overall structure, or that is organizations and their role in facilitating corruption, which I've already talked about. The next one is worth talking about. Class 4 is going to be a bit shorter than the others. The reason being, I'll be traveling on that day and I need to head to the airport early. So we're going to only meet for 2 hours. Um, and here we'll be talking about grand corruption practices, as well as public choice theory and how it relates to corruption. Everything should be self-explanatory in terms of the readings. You'll be going back to hearing from Professor Levmore, and then a couple of other speakers who will be talking about these issues. Okay, now to make up for our hour that we're missing, you will have until April 13th to take an online quiz, which will be worth 10 points. Um, and that will measure your two things. One, whether you read the article I'm talking about, that I'm mentioning here, the corruption paradigm of access and lobbying, looking beyond the corruption paradigm, by in an American law journal. And then I will be talking about lobbying, and how it borders on corruption and how it should be treated, um, in by policymakers, and in terms of our impressions in this class. Now, what's going to happen here is we're also going to be moving towards a class that is perhaps professor driven to a class that is student driven. And those classes are 5 to 7, and I will be talking about that as we move through. But here's my first chance to at least introduce it to you. In class 5, which is 13 days after the quiz deadline, we will meet again and we'll be talking about measures to counter corruption. And then we begin our perspectives from the students. And so there'll be what your pre-class preparation activities are is one, you watch another video on anti-corruption policy by this woman named Carolyn Coberly, who's pretty good, perhaps a little boring in her delivery, but she certainly hits all the right points. Then, and this is the most important thing here, you need to reread or rewatch the material that was most impactful to you, and then you're going to share your perspectives on it with the class. And this will be part of your grade. It won't be worth a lot, but it'll be my chance to see how you essentially make presentations and how prepared you can be in terms of essentially standing up in class and explaining the one that hits you the most and why it matters to you. And we'll talk more about how you're going to do that, but that's what I want to do, and this is the part of the transition. Okay, a mere 7 days after that, this is where it really starts. We need to have your paper proposals done. And so you're going to be pitching to the class what you want to write about. You're also pitching it to me in the sense that I want to talk about some aspect of corruption in the Philippines. Maybe I'll use all public sources, but I want to essentially apply the prism of law and economics to this problem. And I like to think I'd like to know what you think about it, Professor Dan. That's basically what I want to see. So as you can tell, I'm not necessarily asking you to do anything other than to build your paper proposal. Now, it's really important here to make a good choice. And I will be talking about how to make a good choice before that, but it's key. If you have made a bad choice of paper, you can be a brilliant student. If your topic is just doesn't make sense or is just too hard or you can't get materials, you're going to be banging your head against the wall. as opposed to a student who may not be necessarily super, who comes up with a very good topic. That person will probably outperform the brilliant student with the bad topic 9 times out of 10. All right. And so that'll be the time to do that. That is worth points for your class. I believe up to 15 points. This is where it matters a lot. Okay. The next class, class 7. Um, Again, I'm not burdening you with too much work here on class 7 in terms of your uh, pre-class preparations. Essentially, you have to watch 3 videos. And then we're going to have panels. We're going to pretend that Francis Fukuyama, let's see, we'll highlight Francis Fukuyama, Matthew Stevenson, and Sean Hagen, 3 pretty notable anti-corruption experts who do a lot of economic thinking about corruption, are essentially visiting the Philippines. And because you guys are such noted experts at this point, you are going to react to these videos and offer maybe criticism or additionality that will add to the conversation. And we're not going to watch the videos in class. That would be a waste of time. Your goal is to watch these videos before. So you go ahead and do that and be ready to talk. And that will be our last class that we meet at. Again, I imagine that you'll be spending some time on your papers because only 28 days later your papers are due. And so on June 22nd is your penalty-free deadline for papers. I put the June 22nd because I have to submit my grades by July. And paper topics, which we'll be talking about, we've already talked about already. Um, Either an assessment and possibly connected with recommendations if reasonable ones are ascertainable. But the thing that's really important here, I need to see you taking the tools that we have developed and applying them to the issues that you are presenting in your paper. In the previous class, I was a little bit, I felt the students could have done better in this area, and I'm really hoping that you will do better in this area. One student in the previous class wrote a great paper, but basically left that part out, and then after we talked a bit, added it in and made a much, much better paper. So you need to think about that. All right, now we're coming to grades, which everyone seems to care about to at least a certain extent. And I want to be as transparent as possible about how I'm going to evaluate you. So you have basically, you started the class or finished class 1 with 0 points. After that, you can earn up to 125 points. And this is how you can do it. You have your outside of class assignments. You've already done one with the quiz that I gave you a few weeks ago. That was worth 10 points. Later on in the semester, you'll have another outside the class quiz. That's another 10 points for a total of 20 points. Then you're going to be doing the class participation, which I'll be tracking. Hopefully, it's a little hard to do when there's 20 people, but I'll hopefully do my best. I've already kind of set up a seating chart and I'll be able to track you. And I hope you're going to participate. And each of those classes are worth not a huge amount, 5 points, with a total of 20 points. And then the classes 6 and 7, these are worth 15 points each. Class 6, remember, is your pitch on your paper proposal. And the next class is your participation as a panelist when the 3 eminent speakers finish their speeches. And then finally, there's the final paper. And when you add up all those numbers, it comes out to 100, 125. Your grade will depend on how well you score against the 125 benchmark. I do want to note that if I see outstanding efforts in various areas, I reserve the right to give extra credits. So, and that would probably come in the form of the paper. I'm not necessarily seeing opportunities for extra credit in the other areas. So how am I going to grade you? For class participation, here's your table of your rubric of how you get scored. If you're actually, let's go start at the bottom. If you're making snide comments towards other people or just talking and saying nothing, which does happen, I hope it won't, you could possibly get negative points. But if you help me move the class forward, and that's what I want to see you guys move the class forward for me. I would love to not have to talk much at all. And if you guys do that, I'll reward you with the points. But in order to do that, you have to do the reading ahead of time. And again, in many classes in the past where it was face-to-face, I would almost always give quizzes every time we meet. I'm not going to do that here. But so what happens here is in order to make sure that you are taking the time and investing in this class, to give you the incentives, I have to basically watch how you're contributing to the class and whether or not, and to ascertain and judge to what extent you've prepared ahead of time and contributing to making this happen. It's not perfect, and it's hard work, but hopefully I can do it. I reserve the right to change things if it's not working, but I would really hate to be in a situation where I have to essentially give a quiz at the beginning of every class or something to that effect. It's much better if we can essentially ever contribute. But at the same time, I understand we have complicated full lives with other things drawing on us. I can only do one thing, and that's go back to the concept of incentives. I'm giving you certain incentives to be prepared for these classes. If you're not prepared, you will basically not earn the points. You won't get as much out of the classes. So I guess you can be incentivized by being empowered by being prepared, and you'll learn more as a result. But at the same time, you can earn points. So I am, to a certain extent, bribing you with points to do the work you need to do to prioritize the readings and the watching, and which is not, I don't think, very, very much. So moving on. Presentation during class 6. This is a chance to make up to 15 points. You can see for each row, there's a set of points, 7, 4, and 4. I think this is basically pretty clear. So you get to earn points, but more importantly, you get feedback from me as to your proposal. That's really important. I can give you insights, hopefully, that will accelerate what you're doing or perhaps point you in a better direction. Again, it's so easy to go off track. It's so easy to write about stuff that makes no sense or not relevant to the topic. You know, I don't want people writing 40-page things about stuff that just doesn't deal with law and economics. I'm much happier with something like a 15-page paper. That's something that you could that is long enough to be published and punchy enough to give readers insights to to corruption from looking at it from a law and economics perspective. So think about your proposal and be sure to make to be ready to do that, earn some points, and also get some feedback. All right. Then the last opportunity in terms of class participation is as a panelist. You get to both earn points as a knowledgeable panelist and also as an audience member. Not everyone will be a panelist for every speech, so we will break it up. I will offer audiences a chance to ask questions of the panelists. I will probably be the moderator at this point, and I will be looking to the panelists and I'll ask you questions to respond. I can, as panelists go, I will probably give you some questions ahead of time that you can be ready with, but then the audience can ask whatever you want. And it would be great to see audiences asking challenging questions, and it would be great to see the panelists responding to them in a positive way. We've all been to these kinds of things. Some of us have probably been on panels, and here's your chance to shine in this class in that role. All right, then there's the paper. Remember, it's worth 55 points. Um, by far, the most important thing to me is your understanding of the general concepts and then applying those concepts of law and economics, the theories, to the matter studied. And so uh, we have a paper that your paper should be well organized. It should basically explain some of the theories I've been working on, and then apply it to the subject to better understand it. And again, I will give you some examples about this coming up, but that's where you'll earn your best points. Grammar is important, but you can get your grammar down by using basically Microsoft Word Editor, or even if you're using Google Docs, they can help you with your grammar. Now, it was shocking at times to see the problems with some of the grammar in papers I got, and if you by simply using these tools, you can easily improve your grade. And then the last thing, which is somewhat important to me, but perhaps not crucial, is following a consistent set of citations. Um, I don't, there's something called Blue Book in the United States, citation style. There's all these various academic styles. The key here is there's some people that emphasize footnotes. There's some people that refer to the author in parentheses within the text and then have a long set of bibliography in the back. I am not going to necessarily require you to go one way or another, but you should be consistent. And you don't have to, as I am doing, I am not going and putting things like the publisher and the date published, et cetera, et cetera. Everything is online. I basically want an author, a title, and a link. I guess perhaps the date published and perhaps the date accessed. Those are the most important things these days. We don't need library numbers. We don't need publishers. Um, so that's all you basically need from me. I just want to see it consistently done. And when you cite to a particular point, I want to basically see a basis for whatever you're saying. Um, and a lot of again, this I saw problems here, and I hope we'll be able to do better with it. So that's the paper. Um, some people say, or some professors go by the idea that if you don't get a paper in time, you fail. I don't believe in that. But I believe in penalties. If you don't get your paper in, if you have to use an extra 3 days, sure, go ahead. Use those extra 3 days, but it's going to cost you, and the cost will be penalties for untimely submission. And basically, you lose a half a point per day. Uh, then it starts going for the first 5 days, 1 point per day for the next five, 2 points per day for the next five after that, with doubling every 5 days until it no longer matters. So you lose points that way. This is the only way to make it fair to your fellow classmates without necessarily having a nuclear bomb of not accepting a paper. So, oh, my dog, if something happens where your dog ate your paper or there was a flood and everything got destroyed, well, I'll try to take those into account, but it's not going to be an all or nothing thing. If your papers are late, I'm going to have to penalize you, um, and that those penalties will be based on the rules that I put out right here. Okay, the last thing is the academic integrity policy, and this is what I got from Father Ranny. We need this in here, and you can read it. You probably saw it in other papers or other syllabuses. Now, one thing I did want to mention, when we said about academic integrity, um, I sometimes see students I suspect that students are sometimes recycling papers. And I'm not necessarily against something like this. You've done a lot of research on something, you're sort of an expert, you want to use that research again. That's okay. It's all right with me. I'm not going to necessarily force you to do something new. If you have something that you feel good and you want to talk about and apply law and economics to it, go right ahead. But I ask you that you disclose that to me. And I may want to see the paper because sometimes I suspect that students recycle papers. They basically try to write the same paper for different professors, and that's a problem. At one point, a long time ago, I had one student write for, 15 or 20 pages about trade, and then suddenly I'm reading about arbitration. And that was clearly someone trying to swap in some material, hoping that I did not read the entire paper. That student didn't do very well as a result. So um, please consider that what this balanced approach, which I am proposing. If you have some aspect, if you've been doing some studying in some other area, uh, no problem. But I want to see law and economics apply to it, and I want to see basically what you've done before. So that's it. I believe I'm going back to the end. Yes, I'm waiting for Father Ranny to sign it, or at least not object to the document. So that's it. I will be seeing you guys 2 Saturdays from now. You have a bit of material to go over before that, but it should be reasonably, it shouldn't be that burdensome, and you should hopefully enjoy most of it and be ready to talk about these issues when we meet on February 15th. So thanks a lot. Have a great day. We'll be seeing each other soon.